So tonight, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over some of the work that has happened over the past year, maybe a little bit longer. I'm very pleased to say we'll be starting with Michael Cuba. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah. My name is Michael Cuba. I am in Haycock, Pennsylvania, and I'm going to confess that the photo that you're looking at was not taken in 2020. This is the Domini House, which is in East Hampton on Long Island. And this house was built in several sections. The first section in 1770 or thereabouts. You can see to the right of the tree, there's a door and a line. That section there was added in about 1800. And then to the right of that, there is what is a wood shop. And then all the way over on the left, there's a clock shop. Next slide. Okay. In about 1940, this house was documented and incorporated. There you go. This house was incorporated into the Historic American Building Survey. And there are several sheets of drawings, including, as you can see, not just the framing details, but trim details, and all sorts of information was included in written and photographic descriptions into a file for HABs right about 1940. Next slide. Here is the interior of the wood shop as depicted in one of the photos from HABs. Go back one. There you go. And so right about 1946, the contents of the house were auctioned off, and shortly thereafter, the house was demolished. The wood shop and the clock shop were separated from the main structure and went to live on different parts of Long Island. The contents of the clockmaker shop and the wood shop went to an antiques dealer, and in about 1958, Winterthur, the museum in Delaware, got wind of this tool collection, went and purchased the whole tool collection that remained in the antique shop, and they built a replica of this very shop in their museum. Next slide. So this is that shop today. The shop had been in use privately on Long Island for a great number of years, and then about maybe 2013 or so, the clock shop and the wood shop were offered up to the East Hampton Historical Society and housed temporarily at a site called Home Sweet Home. And ultimately, the East Hampton Historical Society decided that they were going to go ahead and commission the reconstruction of the house based on the HABs drawings on the original site, which had been converted into a municipal parking lot. And so they gained the authority to dig up that parking lot where they found the original foundation stones, including a millstone that was used for the original front step, and build this house right where it once stood. And they brought back the clock shop and the wood shop. And you can see on the left-hand side that there's some tall posts making that shed roof. When the wood shop was moved, they had gone ahead and cut those posts down and put a gable roof on it, which I guess was on it from the late 1940s until about 2013 when it came back. So we had to scarf onto those original posts to restore that length and rebuild the shed rafters. Next slide. So this is the interior of the wood shop now, relocated back at the same site. Whoop. Next slide. And there you can see somebody used a race knife to carve 1791 into one of the braces, which certainly helps us date the shop. Next slide. And here is the completed frame, which was a really interesting structure to build, partially because we were reinterpreting this frame with the assistance of local architect Bob Hefner, I should say this was a project that was given to the New Jersey Barn Company, and I had the privilege to work with them on this project. And although it's a big structure now, it's made of 3 small structures, and we built it that way. So instead of building things continuously, we built it as it was built with several additions, which made for some complicated framing as reference faces changed frequently. Next slide. And here you can see an example. If you look, the timber that's rising to the left in the upper corner is on one reference face, and the opposite timber in the lower right-hand corner actually switches reference faces. So there was a little head scratching going on in the shop when we were doing this. Next slide. And here is the finished interior. This is what would have been one of the original gable ends. Well, and there you go. That's the last slide. There you go. And so that's what it looks like today. So if any of you are ever summering out in the Hamptons, I highly recommend you stop in for a visit.
So Michael, maybe I missed out, but what is that property being used for now? You said that if people are in the Hamptons, maybe they can visit. Is it for?
It is for public visitation. Currently, they don't have plans of finishing the exterior. They really wanted to show off and highlight the frame. So most of the interior finishes won't be placed in the structure. Some parts will be finished, but essentially the East Hampton Historical Society wants to use it as a museum piece. So it won't really be finished on the interior. It'll be finished on the exterior.
Tim,
Yeah.
you're up.
All right. So this has been an interesting year. I'm sure everybody interesting in different ways. One of the things that happened for our business was an increase in business, but somehow this year we also had a whole bunch of assessments of existing frames of different types. So I think I've got a couple of new pieces sprinkled into here. Oh, and a reconstruction, but most of this is going to be historical kind of stuff that I had the privilege of going and assessing. So I don't know if you want to actually make this into a full screen presentation, Mac, or, I mean, I'm fine with it as it is, but anyway, this is,
sorry.
No, it's no problem. This is a train station from Brighton. This is one of the closest communities to us that actually has services. At one time, Brighton had 3 train stations, and this is the one that remains. It's a brick building, obviously, with a timber frame truss roof that I got to go crawl up inside. So next slide.
Where are you, Tim?
Oh, sorry, I'm in Ontario, Canada. I'm near, well, Brighton, which is right across the lake, more or less due north from Rochester. If you know where that is, then we're north of that. And where Dalil and I are right now is about 10, 15 miles north of the lake. Brighton's right on the water. Well, a little bit south of those railway tracks you saw. So this, as far as I could tell, was a totally pre-cut truss system. This is fir. This is likely out of, as far as I could tell, was fir out of BC, would have come on the train. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful set of trusses. I apologize. This is my snapshot photography, which is not awesome. And obviously there's been a few people up there trying to do different things with wiring, but it's really a gorgeous set of trusses. And I really hope that if someone decides to restore the building, they choose to just get rid of that ceiling and show off the whole thing. Next slide.
Trying.
Yeah, no worries. This dates from 1890, I think. Okay, are we? I don't know how many we jump ahead there.
No,
That was. Yeah, right. Okay, yeah, perfect. This dates from 2002. This is a set of. Unfortunately, you can't really see more of them in this. This is a set of straw bale timber frame cabins at a YMCA camp near Kitchener-Waterloo, which is about an hour on the west side of Toronto. And they had one of their counselors got really rambunctious with a fire starter, and he managed to burn a bunch of the roof. And so I had to come and certify the timbers that they were replacing. I don't know if there's anything really exciting there. The tarps are all covering straw bale walls, which survived very nicely in the fire. Yeah, let's go next slide, because hopefully we can see. Yeah, if you look at the second timber from the center to the left, there's some marks there that are actually, those are old shear plate remnants. The original timbers that they used to build this were reclaimed Doug fir from a commercial build, and now we had to bring in some local pine, which unfortunately we can't really show, but you can see the straw bale wall below there. They did have to scrape off the plaster as it was too damaged, but they're just going to replaster that. And there, you can see the decking on there is reclaimed flooring from a boxcar, from a railway car. They're really inventive at this particular camp, the Paradise Lake YMCA camp. If you ever get the chance, it's a really neat place. All right, next slide. This is a restored, rebuilt, but moved log cabin in Consicon, which is in Prince Edward County, which is sticks down into Lake Ontario, a little bit east of us and south. And this is for a forest school, and it was an interesting one to go and get to be part of. I needed to help them quite a bit with putting a stairwell in there, but see, there's well documented, those logs. This dates from, I believe, 1860 originally. Next slide. This is one of the new ones. This is a hammer beam, set of hammer beam trusses, so-called, Ben, don't hit me, above a great room in a new milled log house. And I just thought it was neat to show that the builder was very conscientious about spreading. And so there are big ratchet straps on all of them, holding them until all of that tongue and groove decking gets installed to give some support. Next slide. This is a barn not far from that forest school log home. This is a barn that we got to go and have a look at. This is one of in the last 2 years, I think I've been in 4 buildings, 2 houses, 2 barns, where none of the timbers, at least in a certain part of the place, none of the timbers were reused. Most of the barns that I get to go to are, date from late 1800s, early 1900s, and have timbers that are from older barns than that, which is really neat. But this particular one, these are hewn and they're beautiful, and they weren't used in anything else before this. There's been some modifications to the building, but that swing beam is just, it's a thing of beauty. I'm sorry again that I don't always have the best photographs, although I believe this is one that Dalila took. So
yeah,
it's
no
so
tripod
it's,
though.
no tripod, right? Anyway, this is the detail in the roof of this barn, all the opposed bracing. This is a beautiful, beautiful building. Next slide. And this is looking the other way from there, and you can see some of I think that somebody tried to build an engine lift or something over the main area, and they took out a number of the joists for that loft. And then to the left, you can see there was an addition done, and it was just done so poorly with, I mean, no offense to anybody using logs for rafters, but if you stand outside this thing, you see that sag, and it's just awful. It's too bad, but oh well. The owner is committed to preserving this barn, and so we're looking at the best way to do that. It actually connects to another barn, so I think there's actually, and that one has an addition. So there's 4 different ages of buildings here. Next slide.
I love all the wind bracing in the roof system.
Yeah, it's just something else to get. If you enter the barn the way I did, you go from like kind of really slipshod to really slipshod, and then you come up back into this spot and you look up and you're like, oh my goodness, and And the owner, yeah, exactly. The owner had no idea. And we were like, there was a framer with us, and we were just getting very excited. And he was like, I thought that this was the worst part of the barn. And we're like, what? It's the squares, and it's the, anyway, yeah. So next slide. This is new meets old, new king post trusses with really nice wedged through tenon on that king post, sitting on top of a reclaimed, well, a moved barn. This is in Peterwood. It's going to become a brewery. So that's excellent. It's by Treehouse Timberworks. Next slide. This is a neat one. This is on Wolf Island. So this is a little further east. This is kind of the end of Lake Ontario. If you go east of Wolf Island, they start calling it Thousand Islands and the St. Lawrence. You can catch a ferry from Wolf Island to upstate New York. It's kind of a busy photo, but this is the barn that we are looking down the ridge of. Dates from late 1890s, early 1910s, and then got added on to with the perpendicular. And they really did a pretty good job of it, except when they did that in maybe 1920. They really thought concrete was a great thing, and they did it really poorly. And so the main floor of that addition is all concrete that is now leaning and going bad. But I wanted to show this because, mostly because of the truck, really. The owner, who I heard on the radio today, he's a high-powered lawyer from Ottawa. His uncle used that truck for deliveries on Wolf Island from 1955, someone correct me, 54, 55, anyway, until the mid-70s, then sold it to someone else on the island. And Don Bain, the owner of the barn, was able to purchase it and restore the truck. You can still kind of see delivery in there, DJ's delivery on the door. He purchased it and restored it 5 years ago, and he still uses it to boot around the island. And it's a gorgeous truck. It's a beautiful frame too, and we're gonna fix it up. I think that's the end of me. Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, and then folks, please remember to keep it moving along so that we don't last until 9 o'clock tonight. Chris, are you here?
Yes, I'm on. So to my timber framing peers, there's nothing earth-shattering about this project, but it was written up in the paper as a world-class kiosk. And I will let you guys be the judge of that or not. Next slide. So we did this as a workshop with the local Sisters area woodworkers out of Sisters, Oregon, SAW for short, and also in cooperation with the Sisters Trails Alliance, of which I'm a board member, as well as the Forest Service. So it was a very cooperative project. And as many of you know, whenever you're doing a community project and a workshop with other people, regardless of their skill level, these kind of projects take twice as long. They are twice as unprofitable, but they are 3 times as gratifying. So that's why we keep doing them. And this was a very gratifying project. Next slide. So this was all made out of pine that we harvested from around Sisters, and we had the sign engraved with a local CNC machine. And I should say this project is all of about 4 months ago, so not very dated. Next slide. So this is actually after day 2. Day 1 was cutting and laying out joinery, and on day 2 we got this baby assembled. And the design for this, actually I was inspired by the design from a kiosk that I saw. It wasn't a heavy timber like this guy, but Oregon Garden. So Garden had an interesting kiosk that had the double posted on either side. And I sort of took elements of that design and then modified it for a heavy timber. Next slide. Next. There's our raising. So this is at the head of what we call the Peterson Ridge Trail, which is a network of trails immediately outside of Sisters. It's been a very extensive biking, mountain bike, hiking network of trails. This is basically our signature trail network. So and a fair bit of money was put into the redevelopment of this trailhead. Next slide. So we had a absolutely fabulous, as all community projects tend to be, wonderful camaraderie. It always interesting how the guy with the white hat seems to think he's like the boss of everybody. No different here. Next slide. Everybody was very good about COVID protocols and whatnot. So this is the photo that got put up in the paper. Next slide. Next. Hello, there we go. And that's the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I think because you're at a distance, there's a little bit more lag time. Okay.
Oh, lag time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. We're 3,000 miles away. So yeah.
That's what's happening then. Okay.
Yeah.
Ariel?
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. So I'm Ariel Schechter. I'm here representing my company, Timber Homes Vermont, employee-owned company, of which I'm a partner. And so here's a picture, for starters, of a crook that was framed with 2 live edge curved ash crook blades, 8 inches thick, and a live edge cherry tie at the top there. And there's just 2 sort of birds' mouths cut out of the top of each of the crook blades. And there's a block in there temporarily right now, but that's just where the ridge beam landed on that cable end. So that was a fun one to describe. And we pressure washed that ash, and the surface of it, I don't really have a close-up picture because I only have 10 slides, but the surface of that ash was just like so contoured perfectly and had these wrinkles and ripples in it, and it's really an amazing surface to that stuff. All right, next slide. Here's just a pretty picture of a pergola with some forks. All of this here is black locust. So for the forks, we just had black locust forks that we peeled the sapwood off of with draw knives, and then smoothed it out with spoke shaves and sanders, and then all the timbers and rafters here are locust as well. Next. So here's a sweet residential build. I think we finished this. This photo was probably taken like about a year ago. It's a nice staircase with some cherry treads with through tenons, and there's a cool balcony detail with that funky cherry brace there. There's a lot of cool timber frame details in this building. Actually, that newel post, I guess, that's landing out there sort of on top of that cherry brace, that newel, I forget if it's that one or one of the newels up there on that balcony. Maybe it's actually the far one, like more to the right of that. And it's actually just going up to a rafter, and it has a huge long through tenon, like going up into this rafter with a couple of pegs up there, and probably some screws holding it up too. And so there's like a tension joint holding up that far right corner of that balcony. Next. So we are starting to make, we have a line of houses that we're calling very, very, very fine houses, or just very fine houses, or VFHs for short, which we've been making these panels in our shop. So you're looking at the inside of this house, like on raising day. So what you're looking at is just 2x6 stud framing done in the shop, and there's native 4/4 pine sheathing boards that are running diagonally to give racking obviously resistance. So that's like all, there's no plywood in this build. There's actually, I shouldn't say there's no plywood. There's like, you can see there's like a strip of it. There's like a few places where there's a little plywood to do some structural work. But it's minimal plywood, no foam in the use gold on the foundation. So it's a foam free and almost entirely plywood free build. And we made these panels, and they also have an air barrier on the outside and strapping in, like rain screen strapping installed in the shop. So you're looking at the inside of that situation, you know, like close to the end of the first day of raising probably. And so we had this whole building enclosed. You can go to the next slide. We had the whole building enclosed in 3 days. Here it is like recently as we're really finishing it up. So now you're seeing it all with the shiplap siding and windows, and obviously it's like more finished now. But that was cool to do, like, you know, all these local materials in the panels, and pre-build a lot of it in our shop. And we have these so the very, very fine house line is like pre-designed for efficiency and beauty, and just making like good value decisions around, like, you know, all sorts of things. And we can offer like a less of a cost than a custom product. So we have like a line of very fine houses that we've been developing. Thanks for all the kind comments, y'all. That's sweet to see. Nice to see all the people in here too. This is cool.
That's a beautiful entry, Ariel.
Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna go ahead.
How did you what did you use for insulation?
Yep. So it's blown in cellulose insulation after the fact, not installed, obviously, like, you know, in the shop. So yeah, that entry, I don't know if it's easy to go back, but yeah, that was like our suite, like one of our hallmarks as a company is those covered entries. Yeah, sweet. So that's 2 locust forks, scribed boulders, cute little gable entry with you know, step lap rafter tails, and there's a curved cherry tie in there. So yeah, that's like one of our sweet hallmarks. Josh Jackson classic right there. All right, next. So we did this really weird barn in New York State that had these humongous round to square posts. Like underneath this barn, as you'll see, was just all round wood. And like, that's probably the biggest diameters in there. We're getting up like 20, probably like 2 feet was like as big as some of those butts were, maybe a little bigger. And then they were milled into 10 by 10s. And so there's some of the joinery there. And we had them stop milled at our Sawyer's bandsaw mill, and made a sweet jig for our beam saw to just cut those, kind of resting on that square part right there. And yeah, it was fun. Next slide. So here's that barn. So you can see the round part downstairs, and sometimes it was just round posts downstairs that were just in like the center line that were just terminated in those ties. But then the ones on either eave side were these like continuous beams, just coming off of those round log bottoms. And then there's all these joists that we sort of hacked away at them with our battery chainsaws, and then adds to them. The next picture, actually, if you go to the next slide, yeah, this is like 10 by 10s, yeah, huge timbers. Those rafters actually were 10 by 12 by 36s or something. It was huge. Those joists right there, we finished with adzes. It was really fun. There were a ton of them. We got really good at adzing for a little while. There's some of those posts hanging out down there. Huge crane, like each one of these bents was like so heavy, and We had this whole elaborate crane rigging system. It was just, yeah, it was a big deal. Yeah, the footprint of that was, it was a funny footprint. It was 55 or 66 feet long. It's like 55 by 66 or something. It's big. All right, next slide. We have a solar carport that we're doing because we're also kind of like have like a product line. We have, I was really interested to see that kiosk because we do a lot of kiosk stuff and we're into seeing that kind of thing. I love the gable shape of that. This is our new product line, which is a solar carport, and there's just chains instead of braces, kind of in that orientation, and ready in eastern states, and there's like full clearance to walk all around. There's no beams that are like intersecting where your head's gonna be, and then we use black locust or white oak posts, and yeah, pine roof stuff, but black, all our posts in these outdoor things are all black locust, usually, sometimes white oak. Next. There's just a sweet pic of a barn. Just a nice shot of the crew. I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Ariel.
Thank you all. Whoa.
Cool. Hey, Mac. So I think, yeah, so it's my turn to go, I guess.
Do you see your picture?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Please
Cool.
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Everybody doesn't need to be introduced. Just
Just go
person
away.
up.
Good. All right. Cool. Ariel, hey, how's it going? It was nice to see you there. It's been a while since I last seen you. So it's wonderful to see everybody's work. It's so cool. So it's wonderful. So I just wanted to show a couple of photo or projects that we did. Let's say in last year and a bit. This is what you're seeing here is a contemporary, modern-looking wigwam. So the building, so it's an entranceway to a Native American museum, and the building used to be the former American embassy. And to step back and give context, I'm from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And in the bottom left photo here, right across the street, you can see Parliament Hill. So that's the main Capitol Hill where the bigwig politicians sit. So it's right across the street there. So you can imagine kind of the context where the U.S. embassy is right across the street from us. So this is what makes this kind of unique is obviously the form and everything, but this was a design build assist project, and we were literally like hours ahead of the building crew. And so all we had in the very beginning was these sketches of what the designer or what the architect wanted. So there wasn't structural, there was nothing telling you any lengths or anything. It was just here's a thought that we think we want to build, and out of that, we extrapolated all this information, well, for the most part. And what you're seeing there's maybe 70 or so of these kind of ribs or columns or whatever you want to call them. And every single one of them is unique. So there's 70 different ones. They're all in-house glue laminated plywood, 3/4 inch marine grade, 5 layers thick. And the horizontal pieces that kind of make this wavy looking thing. So it's the horizontal pieces that connect one rib to the next, and there's 3 rows. So you have the bottom, the middle, and the very top. Each one of these required compound cuts. And so in total, there's just over 500 different compound cuts to be made. And each one of these assemblies we use those metal dovetails. I forget the name of the company, but you router out the ends of that horizontal piece, and you attach one half, and the other half goes onto the rib.
Pitzels.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah, cool. So pixels, yeah. So we bought thousands of these pixels, and we routed out. And the intent behind this was they didn't want to see any metal. So we did our best to try to hide this. And the third kind of challenge was the scheduling. So we had 2 months to do this. And so it was tons of overtime. Everybody was just, there was 18-hour days kind of thing. So the end result is really cool. It's really unique, and it's probably going to be the first and last that'll do something like that. And I just wanted to share with people that, the empowerment that, by learning how to draw things out and learning spatial, like hips and valleys and how these things interconnect, enabled us to do this. So that was a really fun project. So next slide, please. That's the next slide? I guess so. Okay, all right. So
you didn't do this one, did you?
Well, so this is the current, so right across the street, as I pointed out the last slide, this is the Parliament Hill. So this is the kind of the crown jewel of Canadian democracy. And this is the center block. So center block, this big building is currently undergoing this 2-decade-long restoration project. And I'm so fortunate and so happy to be a part of it. It's literally once in a generation opportunity. It's not even a once in a lifetime. It's just once in a generation opportunity to do this. And so I want to just show some of the work that we're going to be undergoing. So I kind of moved from doing timber framing into fine woodworking. This project has been going on since, well, the total program has been going on since 1998 to move people out of this building. So in this building is where the House of Commons sits, where the Prime Minister sits, the Senate sits, and so all the big wigs of politicians. The building was built in 1916. The original one burnt during the First World War, so around near the end of 1915. Yeah, so it's a bit of a historical significance for us. This next slide is some of the fine woodwork that's inside of this building. And so this is just behind the Senate. And so you can see kind of these fan vaults that come up and then they flower out into these kind of beautiful little intricate pieces. So part of my job is to remove some of this, or in this case, what you're seeing, remove all of this, number it, tag it. We store it in a warehouse. And then later on, maybe a year or so from now, we're going to be restoring this to then later to reinstall. So next slide, please. This is the Prime Minister's office. So this would be like kind of 10 rows down from the president, in comparison. So this is his, all the kind of the fine woodworking in the office that we're going to be taking out. We're going to be removing, tagging, documenting, all that cool stuff. And then shipping to the warehouse, and later on restoring to be reinstalled later. This next one is, so you have the Prime Minister, which is the main, the lead who's been elected, and then the opposer. So, we have the Republicans and it's the Democrats and vice versa. So this is the office of the leader of the opposition. And so this is just some of the beautiful woodwork that's in there, some of the frescoes and stuff like that. So again, same thing. We're going to take all of this woodwork out, all this fine woodwork, tag, crate, ship, to then later on restore and reinstall. Next slide, please. This was a course that one of my students and I put on in Old Montreal. So my student had this amazing and wonderful opportunity to convince his client that we could rebuild this old house, just the timber frame structure. You can see in the top photos, that's the students during the workshop. So what makes this what makes this house really unique is that it's in Old Montreal, and it's in fact lot number 1 of Old Montreal. So the building dates to the 1700 or early 1700s. I think 1720 is when they have archives of it. And so, yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity to train people to scribe, learn how to scribe and install. And so, yeah, so next slide, please.
Patrick, we have a couple of questions for you.
Oh yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so Chris Kane asked if you cut the compound stuff by hand.
We did. Well, by hand. I mean, we used a miter saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we didn't know, of course, not a hand saw, but there's 500 different compound cuts, and you have like 3 days to do them all. So, yeah.
Okay. And Mike Westgard had a question, and I'm going to let him ask it himself, so he's clear about it.
Sure.
I just wondered how you were going to take apart all that exquisite woodworking. My experience in remodel work, I break a lot of things.
Yeah, so we're going to probably break a lot of things too, but just very delicately, slowly, and as careful as possible. But inevitably, I mean, you know, when you take anything out that's been there for 100 and some years, you know, the wood's really dry, it's going to snap. But we're just going to do the best that we can.
Okay, Patrick, we'll have to move it along if we can.
Yeah, no, of course. Yep. So this next slide is just wanted to show some of the work of my students. I have these online courses, and I just wanted to show their work. They've been doing some really amazing work, and it's really inspiring. So I just wanted to show some of this stuff to people. So next slide, please. So some of the students, there's 3 photos at the top. They've created, there's the 4th, but I didn't get that photo. They finished this big exam model that they did. And the 2 at the bottom is Sim Air's kind of trestle sawhorse for his professional certificate. Next slide, please. This is a project that Jeremy and I, so the student that did, him and I did that course that I showed later on, earlier on. Him and I had this really unique opportunity again, commissioned from this museum in Japan to put on, to showcase European joinery. And so we decided to build this guitard with traditional joinery and build this kind of curved looking roof. And it's a traveling exhibition, and it's traveling around Japan currently. I think it's in Sapporo, then its next stop will be in Tokyo. So there we are with the 2 students and the director of the museum at the museum. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stephen?
Actually, this is Ben Loveland. I'll be talking instead of Stephen. He's in a noisy environment.
Okay. Please, folks, please introduce yourselves. There are quite a few people on the call now, like over 90, so they might not know you.
Right on. My name is Ben Loveland, shop manager and designer for More Sun Timber Frames in Long Creek, South Carolina. When I think about the anxiety induced by some of our projects, my mind is put at ease by watching some of Patrick's stuff. So makes me feel a little better. I don't have to do some of that. So I'll just jump in. This is a project. It's a community space at a housing development in Clemson, South Carolina. And it's kind of an intentional community. They're off of very near the campus of Clemson University. But this is just an open air portion of a community space that also has kitchens, dining areas. There will be a pool on the back side, and and that's really all there is to that one. We work together with Fire Tower on this, as most everything we do. This next slide is this is some of our favorite type of work to do. So local couple came to us building a small little retirement home just so they can be closer to grandkids. And the fella who owns this property is an old timber framer back from the Upper Loft days in Lakemont, Georgia. So he was very keen to use us for the project just because it's literally 5 minutes from the shop. So these are just simple king post trusses with a raised bottom cord and a simple little shed dormer. It's one of our favorite types of projects because we feel like we're building for real people. So often the work that we get here in our neck of the woods is building, second homes for Atlanta retirees, and this is a nice breath of fresh air. So next slide.
I am trying.
So if any of y'all saw the shop tour, you would have seen the inside of our new shop. We've recently we recently built a structure that's basically the four walls of it are old shipping containers, and we've set a timbered plate across the entirety of it, and set conventional trusses on top. So we've got about a 60 by 100 open floor shop that conveniently comes with plenty of storage. The shipping containers are quite a blessing for finding room for all the crap that you accumulate. This is showing a fit up in progress of a barn that was another community project for a housing development in Marietta, South Carolina, which is really, really close to Travelers Rest, South Carolina, if anyone knows that area. But it was all rough sawn yellow pine, and you can go to the next slide. And here is that barn after it was raised. This is several weeks after we have departed. We didn't bring the goats with us. They showed up on their own afterwards. But the side wings you see there that are conventionally framed house the kitchen and the bathroom areas, and this is a kind of an event facility community area. Next slide. So this was a fun little project, a head scratcher of sorts. We got called in by a builder that we work with that we work with a lot, and he was told by his framers that he couldn't fit a set of stairs in the area that the architect had given, and granted it was tight, but we did definitely fit a set of stairs in this space. The post that you see on the left side that's holding up the first landing, it actually travels up 2 more floors and holds or actually I guess it's just 1 more floor and holds another landing coming up from the 2nd floor. This is basement level you're seeing now. And those are curious. It's white pine stringers with yellow pine treads. Next slide. And here's a shot from the very, very top all the way down. There was a series of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 different landings, each with a winder in them. And like the one post that you see on the far side of the picture, you can kind of tell that it's actually holding up 2 separate landings. This was a fun one. Getting all of these, the little intricacies of fitting a code compliant set of stairs into this tight space was very interesting. And also you'll see that it's also intersecting windows on the right side, which we had to be mindful of because the windows were already there and we're lifting heavy timber next to them. It's always a little nerve-wracking. So next slide. This is a picture of a project that we're working on in Abbeville, South Carolina with Fire Tower. And it is a restoration project of an old church. I could be mistaken, but I believe it's a pre-Civil War structure. And Stephen is actually on site right now, working on the renovation of the steeple. This particular project is quite rare for us, but we relish the opportunity to get to do stuff like this. I know that the crew down there is having a slow go of it, but a very fine go of it. So I think that's, oh no, we got a couple more. So if I know that we'd shown pictures of this one before, but these were of in construction mode the last time we shared. But this is the Village Green community space in Cashiers, North Carolina. Also worked with Fire Tower on this one. This is they call it a community space, but I actually haven't been able to get into it after they've finished it. But laminated glulam curves on top of these hammer beams. And if anyone wants to chime in for what you would call this this brace.
Ben, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can.
The those curves in the bottom there, we didn't quite know what to call them. We affectionately called them Cupid's bows. I'm not sure if that's an accurate term or not. But it was a fun project to give scope to the size. It's a little over 40 feet clear span. And the tie rods that connect the different hammer beam sections are all connected with a four-way coupler, essentially. Anyways, it was a fun project. Lot of stuff going on there. Keyed beams, glulam curves, and all sorts of other things. Now you can go to the next picture. One of the most interesting things about it, you can kind of see in the picture, we were really heartbroken because this is a commercial project and it has to be outfitted with sprinkler system, of course. But when they started installing the sprinkler system, we were like, oh man, I can't believe they're having to put all this kind of like randomized metal everywhere. But the guys who ran the sprinkler, they did a really great job. Very neat, very clean. And it really, you can't quite tell from the picture, but you can see the sprinkler system that's painted white. And they did a really great job of doing I guess a nice addition, even though it was for the sprinkler system, and that's all. But yeah, that's the Village Green in Cashiers, North Carolina, and I think that's the last of our slides.
Hey, Ben, in the previous picture, there was a question about how to attach the ties to the timber. It looked like you were going right through the center. What's your attachment there?
Yeah, those tie rods are drilled in past the joinery that holds the curves in, and there is it's pretty substantial relish left in that timber behind the curve where it's being held in by a 5-inch, half-inch steel plate washer and nuts that's in through the center of those things.
Like a bed bolt connection?
I'm sorry?
Like a bed bolt connection, so to speak?
I guess potentially. Yeah, it's just a threaded rod, essentially, that goes through the timber and has its own mortise on the backside of the curve that is then held with a plate and washer.
Captured nut.
Yeah, captured nut.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ben.
I agree with Dennis. Hi, folks. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Martin from Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, and I've been a Timber Frame Guild member since 2019. In full disclosure, I'm a sustainable architecture design builder, so timber framing is just one tool in my toolbox, and a new one at that. I took my first timber frame course with Jeremy Toppitzer in 2019. Next slide, please. This was my first non-workshop frame, and I was one of a handful of folks who cut it. This is to be a home for Shelby Holland and his wife, Donovan, and a future home base for Village Carpentry and Landscaping, a family-owned construction company that Shelby runs with his brother and his mom. Shelby's committed to advancing sustainable materials in his business, and so a locally harvested timber frame was a natural and easy choice for this company who already had experience with the craft. Next slide. Hempstone, which is us, partnered with Shelby to utilize new natural building materials. We taught the crew how to use Hemp Crete, which is poised to impact profound change in the building industry due to its scalable nature and carbon beneficial properties. Hemp Crete is a medium density bio-based insulation walling mass made of 3 simple ingredients: chopped hemp stalk called hurd, a lime-based binder, and water. It is mixed together between forms that can be removed almost immediately. In this image, you can see that the Hemp Crete is cast around a wood frame that has been placed 2 foot on center. These studs are attached to the reference face for the timber frame. In this project, Hemp Crete was encased roughly half the depth of the timber frame, but it can be positioned anywhere in relation to the timbers. Next slide. Thanks to the lime binder in Hemp Crete provides thermal mass throughout the insulated assembly. Because of this, the static R value of roughly R2 per inch really doesn't do Hemp Crete justice. This 11-inch wall will perform more like a super insulated house than a conventionally built wall assembly. This image shows Hemp Crete midway through installation. Hemp Crete is cast in 2-foot lifts that run all the way around the building. The material is placed into the wall by hand or with a mechanical chute, and then packed lightly around the structural frame. A typical build this size will take 2 to 3 weeks to install. Next slide. Once installed, Hemp Crete can be left exposed internally, but is typically covered with a vapor open finish like plaster, wood, or MGO board once the Hemp Crete has dried out sufficiently. Cast in place Hemp Crete does need time to dry out, but work can continue on other aspects of the house, so construction doesn't need to slow down. While Hemp Crete is monolithic, meaning it serves as the entire body of the wall thickness, it's not airtight. So either clay or lime plaster or an airtight membrane is applied to one face to provide an airtight barrier. Next slide. The exterior was plastered in lime to serve as both an air barrier and a water control layer. Since lime plaster was a new technique for the crew, Hempstone led the plaster installation throughout construction. Lime plaster is a traditional finish that has been used throughout the world for millennia, and although it's fallen out of favor in our industry, it's tried and true. Once cured, lime plaster becomes limestone and provides a robust, attractive finish which lasts for many decades with minimal upkeep. Next slide. A great deal of attention was paid to local material sourcing. Wood throughout the home was obtained from the building site or managed woodlots of local sawyers. We used a local lime plaster for the interior wall finish, and in areas of the thermal envelope where Hemp Crete was not used, we employed cellulose and wood fiberboard to provide carbon beneficial insulation. We were also able to quantify the carbon storage potential of the house and found that judicious use of natural building materials completely offset the carbon emissions of the structure above grade. Next slide. This house provides a beautiful example of what natural building materials and traditional craftsmanship can do when combined. Speaking to the building crew, they appreciated the opportunity to use materials that were healthy and pleasant to work with throughout the construction process. Shelby's convinced that using natural materials is both cost-effective and marketable to his working-class Western Massachusetts clientele. He's been able to distinguish his company and has already begun to benefit from the press and attention that building sustainably has provided. Next slide. The house is nearly complete and has already been featured prominently at the 2020 Hemp Building Conference and in local newspapers. Once the house is finished, we anticipate it will attract a good bit more attention, as this is the most accessible and prominent hemp crete structure to date in New England. We're thrilled that the timber frame serves as a prominent feature of this house and showcases the use of natural materials and traditional craft. Thank you. Next slide. In Shelby's downstairs office, which he plans to host clients once things return to normal, there's a truth window to showcase Hemp Crete. Like all natural building materials, Hemp Crete calls out to be felt. This window serves as a way to get a literal feel for Hemp Crete. So if you're ever in the Pioneer Valley and would like a tour, please let me know. And if you have any additional questions about Hemp Crete, lime plaster, or other carbon beneficial building materials, reach out to me at hempstone.net for more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, our good friend and good guild supporter, John Miller, was unable to be here this evening. So I'm just going to, I apologize, but I'm going to basically read what he wrote. I'm unable to answer anything but the most basic of questions, I'm afraid. But we wanted to show these pictures. So the first two slides are progress shots of the pool house on Bainbridge Island. All solid sawn yellow cedar, tapered arches and yellow cedar glue lamb. And all of the steel on the structure is 3/16 stainless steel. That's just the second shot. And you can see the glue lamb, tapered glue lamb arches right there in the center. The next series of slides, 3 and 4, timber rotunda for the event center at Powder Mountain ski area in Eden, Utah, which is at 8,900 feet elevation. 2 irregular dodecahedron. I love these words, dodecahedron, and that is a 12-sided figure. 2 of them are 30 feet clear span conical roofs, and it has to sustain a 216 pounds per square foot snow load. All engineered timber joinery consists of custom fabricated knife plate style connections, 300 custom steel shapes, 2 hot dip galvanized 6-foot 6-inch diameter compression rings. That would be, I believe, at the top, although it doesn't say that. 2,000 plus bolt sets and 145 timbers comprising of over 900 board feet. We're going to get statistics with this one. So the next slide is the Kent YMCA, 47,000 square feet of community and recreational center. The complete glue lamb and steel package for the notorium, the entry, and the fitness area timber roof system. The glue lamb timbers totaled over 70,000 board feet, comprising 473 pieces, including 3 of the largest glue lamb beams ever installed in Washington state. The yellow cedar beams were 95 feet long, 12 1/8 inches wide, 8'2" tall. Those beams are 8'2" tall. That's a large beam. So when I first looked at that, I thought that was like a pic, like somebody had drawn it, like an artist's depiction, but that's actually a photo. And you can see those beams that frame that space. I imagine lifting them 95 feet long, would be a bit like spaghetti. Imagine that was challenging. And this is the Kent YMCA from the outside, a very attractive structure. Okay, so slides 8, 9, and 10 is a waterfront residence on Bainbridge Island, raised deck on pilings, all RFV, that's radio frequency kiln dried Douglas fir, 13,800 board feet, 191 pieces, a cruciform shape with a valley system. All posts are turned 12-inch and 14-inch rounds. Curved glue lamb floor joists, and a note to the scandalized traditionalists in our crowd here tonight. We know there is a lot of metal in our stuff. It's all in seismic zone D, and most of it has coastal wind speeds and exposures above 100 miles per hour and or high snow loads. So, and some of these structures had all 3. So some really pretty work though. Love the shapes. And then those are the 12 and 14-inch all-round posts. Okay, I didn't do it justice, but that's from John Miller of Cascade Joinery. Peter?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Dan?
Yeah. So anyway, thanks. I feel completely out of my element, I have to tell you. I'm just a novice, actually. A community sort of guy up here in northern Alberta, Canada. And yeah, so we were we built a community center out of timber frame and straw bale. I don't know, about 10 years ago as a community build. And we were going to get the Timber Framers Guild to be involved, but it ended up that we just had to do it ourselves just for financial reasons. And but it seems to have inspired the community, and that place, even through these hard times, is still sort of holding its own. And so there was a bunch of moms that were meeting once a week in this community center. And they got together and they said, we should have a playground here. And the whole place is all about natural building and sustainability and everything like that. So these moms were saying, well, wait a minute, like that's what our kids usually play on, is like rocks and trees and stumps. So how about we have some slides and zip lines? And so we thought, okay, let's run another workshop. And, we'll get a bunch of people, because I actually find that it goes quite a bit faster with a lot of helpers. I mean, maybe I'm not looking for the same quality as you guys are, but I'm just looking at getting the thing done. And since we're all volunteers, or most of us, just thought, let's run a workshop. So we get all the playground people to, the people that will approve it, and the regulators and all that stuff involved. We order the materials, and then it's March 2020 and everything gets sort of canceled. And it ends up being, this is Lance Cornock here, my neighbor and president of the Demet Cultural Society. And it turned out that it was just me and him. Next slide. So instead of 2 or 3 weeks, it ended up being three months, just him and me working on this thing. And then once we got it all put together, especially the big components, then we got a local industry, like the oil patch guys, to come and help us with their cranes. And because Lance and I, there was just no way that we could lift this thing with my little John Deere tractor in the background there. We tried, and it just about killed us. But so we decided to call in the forces. Next slide. Yeah, there's a bit of a lag between here and wherever you guys are. Anyway, so they raised this thing for us, and basically this was impossible to do by ourselves. But luckily they all pitched in. Next slide.
It might be them a little slow-witted, Peter.
All right, Mac. I know you better than that, Mac. So anyway, we used for the exposed log work, we used tamarack, which is up here is about the most hardy wood that we could get, and then the rest for the tower, 20-foot tower, is Doug fir, and that we had to bring in from about 300 miles away. Next slide. So we had hoped to, get this thing done so the kids could play on it. This is just a little structure. We actually had to. We ran out of Douglas fir, so I got a little bandsaw mill, and I milled up the rest of the spruce from my place here, and well, not the rest of my spruce, but the rest of my dead standing around the house here, and sawed it up. And next slide. And there was another fella showed up to do some of the high work for us, and a guy by the name of Mac. And you can see our hall in the background there with the solar panels, the straw bale hall. Next slide. And there's the first zip liner taking the first run, little girl by the name of Zoe. Next slide. So we got it done just before the snow fell, and you can tell by the tracks that it gets used a significant amount. A lot of these kids now, because of the COVID, have had theirs, have been kept home from school or homeschooling, and and now they're the mums are thrilled to have a place to go. And the end result is 3 months of construction, just me and Lance, and the odd occasional helper here and there. It's all done the way it's with approvals and all that stuff. It's all safety rated. And the overall cost of this project was about 85,000 Canadian, which people are saying it should be around 250,000 or something. So we're pretty proud of that, and we think it should last. Now the place, somebody asked which community this is. It's the place is called Demmit, Demmitt. So it's almost a swear word. And it's out in the middle. Well, it's just shy of being in the middle of nowhere, northern Alberta. And like the nearest little village is 500 people or something, is about 18 miles away, and yet this place gets used. If you look on the website, you'll find at the Demmit Cultural Society.com. .org, DemmittCulturalSociety.org. You'll see pictures of the hall that we built 10 years ago. Anyway, I think that's it. Maybe there's one more shot. Try it now.
Is that the cultural center there?
Yeah, that's the community center that we built. It's 6,500 square foot on the main floor.
And how many people in the community? Remind me.
I think there's about 30 of us.
30.
It's a super tiny community, and but we attract through music and in this beautiful hall. We attract people from about 100-mile radius to our concerts and stuff, and it actually has been it's rented out every single weekend in the summer for weddings at a good significant price. But yeah, there's literally like 20 or 30 people nearby.
Yeah, so having a community center means something to a community, Peter. It's quite impressive.
Well, thank you. Yeah, another site you guys might want to look up is the Borderline Culture series, and that's a music series that we run out of the Demmit Cultural Society. So yeah. Anyway, thank you all, and it's such a pleasure to see some of you folks again. All the best from up in Canada. Take care.
Thank you, Peter. From whimsical to this.
So this is Will Denton, owner of Messick Vale. This is the best description for it is a round barn. It's a 20-sided auditorium that was built in the early 1900s. It's a combination of heavy timber, nail laminated timber, and steel tension rods. To give you a size or a reference for size, it's about 148 feet from flat to flat on a 20-sided structure. We've been working on this for a couple of months now. We've been doing shoring and replacing steel tension members, timber members, and nail laminated timbers, but there just aren't enough slides in this slideshow to go over all that. But we've loved working on this. It is a auditorium in Shelbyville, Illinois, which is kind of in the southern portion of Illinois, kind of east of St. Louis, with a fairly flat roof with a clear story and then another even flatter roof and a cupola on top. So next slide. One thing we got into this year has been laser scanning. So in the middle of the photo here, you can see a Leica scanner, which does a laser scan similar to a LiDAR scan, which combines laser distance measuring and photos, and then combines it and gives us something when we're all said and done is a 3D AutoCAD file. This job site was is in St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands, so not a bad place to do a job. But what we're going to end up doing here is putting in not a structural timber frame, but a art timber frame. So we're going to be doing a curved glue lam and faceted timber to replicate a nautilus shell in basic design. Next slide. So this is what the Leica Scan can give us. This is of a Queen Post style barn in West Virginia that we just lifted. We're putting a new foundation on it. You can see a couple of the piers, which are no longer plumb. One looks to be about 15 degrees out, and the other one looks to be about 45 degrees out. Luckily, we were able to lift it, shore it, and stabilize it in a time frame to save it. So we're going to be going back when the weather warms up and put a new foundation in and a couple more repairs to give this this barn another 200 years worth of life. Next slide. We've been doing a lot of state work recently as well. This is out near Omaha, Nebraska. This is a barracks building. This is I guess it's a interpretation of what the Park Service thought a barracks log cabin should look like. It's literally Lincoln log joinery, which we all know is never used, but the Park Service did this joinery and we are replicating it to fix their mistakes and adjusting here and there as we can, using better products, better detailing to allow for drainage, to allow for better materials here. I mean, they used a lot of wood that was never meant to be exposed to the elements. And so we've been trying to do our best to make this building last longer as well. The barracks originally dated from the around 1800 plus or minus as a fur trapping station, maybe a little later than that. And this interpretation was done in the 1970s. And so here we are 50 years later, already having to do a substantial renovation of it. As you can see, there's only a few exposed beams to the elements that haven't been replaced. Next slide. This was a first for Messick Vale. We have lifted quite a few buildings, but we have never moved one on our own. And so here is I believe it is a 40 by 85, roughly, barn that we lifted up. The bottom 1.5 feet of every post and all the sill beams was just completely rotted. So we put it up on steel and we rolled it to the new foundation. You can see remnants of where the sill beams were on the left, and we rolled it about 20 feet over to the new foundation. Well, I guess that's about 100 feet when you do the math, but yeah, we moved it to a new foundation just to the side of it. And this was for our clients, his son, or his son was getting married, and so he wanted a barn for them to get married in. And so we were on a tight deadline there. Next slide. This is a raising we just did recently in Chillicothe, Illinois, on the Illinois River. About 10 feet behind where this photo was taken is the Illinois River. And so this was a tower we built for the city of Chillicothe to view the eagle population. It's a eagle observatory. Next slide. This was a really fun project that we got to do in Crystal City, Virginia, part of Arlington County, Virginia. This is a egg-shaped seating pod. There is not one straight piece in this entire frame. We have curved glue lambs, we have solid sawn curves, we have curved benches. I guess the only straight thing you have there is the level of the seat, but this is a really fun project to work on. Next slide. This is the front door for that same project. This is for an apartment building called the Sur. This is all reclaimed white oak from about 50 miles from our shop. Those doors are about 3 inches thick. They are joined together using domino tenons and fully threaded rod from Rothablas to try to keep everything straight and where it needs to be. So for a scale, that opening is roughly 6 feet by 10 feet. Next.
Before you move on, Will,
What was that?
Before you move on, Jennifer had a question.
Okay.
About the doors. She asked how do the doors open with the lack of...
Can we go back?
Yep.
Oh, Jackson already in.
Yeah, so they're split, and so if you look at those, they appear to overlap, but they're split.
Oh, okay, got it.
It's very great work by the craftsman who did the door handles as well. These are we call them Fiji Rafters, but they're splayed rafters. So this is a project we did in St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands, where the jack rafters approaching the end of the hip go at an angle not square to the plates to allow a longer length and better support for the overhangs, to give more leverage for those overhangs to hang on. And so you can see that the last rafter that is square to the plate is probably the ones that intersect with that middle post in the middle of the picture. And then each one after that goes at a more askew angle to allow for better strength, accounting for the overhang. And so with this, it was an interesting frame. We did this all in Alaskan yellow cedar. And everything had to be stainless steel joinery, and it had substantial wind loads and seismic loads because it's in the Caribbean. Next slide. And then this one, I know is not 2020, but it was at the end of 2019. But this is, I guess, September of 2019. This is in the Caribbean as well. This is in St. Kitts in Nevis. And I always love showing a frame with a palm tree wedding bush. So this is a restaurant / bar for the Four Seasons in Nevis. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Mac again. I'll just go quickly through some of the slides of the workshops that we've done. This, of course, is the Sunrise Mill workshop. That's down in, oh gosh, I can't remember the Schwenksville. Yeah, that's it. Schwenksville, Pennsylvania, Montgomery County. And that's the grist mill, the white building behind it that is being worked on by a number of timber frame companies, engineers, and restoration folks. So that was, we'd hope was going to be a guild project, but it turned out to be too complicated. But we did do the sawmill, and that's the sawmill that you see there at timber frame, and that too was in October timeframe of 2019. But it's such a pretty picture, I wanted to show it. All of these photos, by the way, are taken by Daniel Gerard, who happens to be in the audience today, and Yeah, he's become the unofficial guild photographer, and his photography will be showing up in guild publications, and we are just blessed to have Daniel participate in our workshops with us. Here we have a picture of, I think his name is Chester here on the right, who wasn't a timber framer. He came out to learn a little bit more about timber framing, and this is at the OSHA workshop. And we mostly followed COVID protocols there, but Chester letting us down a little bit there, but no problem. We didn't have a single COVID incident at any of the workshops that we did this past year, and not at Hartwood either. So 10 weeks of Hartwood school. So here you can see most people are masked up, and they're working on these very large, it seemed like when they were laying on the sawhorse, it seemed like they were really large timbers, like perhaps they were too large. This had been designed by a number of folks, including Bill Sturm, who was the workshop manager, Scott Ratterman from Eclipse Engineering participating in, and Kevin Teague of Snohomish County, as well as a group of people that he was working with. So it was truly designed by committee. Here we have the raising, the OSO raising, and the morning of raising day, it just rained and rained and rained. But then the sun did come out as we were finishing it up. So the volunteers were game, and they hung in there and stuck with it. These are relatively small. These are the portals to the OSO Memorial Park. These are the portals. It's a linear park, and this pathway runs all the way through it, and it is on the site that alongside the highway. I think it was Highway 530 or Highway 528, something like that, and that runs across northern Washington there. And there was a mudslide where we had millions of cubic feet come cascading down and across the Stillaquamish River, and over this area and into a community, and 54 people were buried, and 43 people succumbed to the mudslide. So this is what we hope is the first of two projects. We hope that we'll be building the memorial itself, but these were the portals. The steel being so tall, you wonder what that is. That's because we're going to use gabion. Not we are. The Snohomish County is going to use gabions, so stone blocks. There are wire cages for stones. You see them alongside highways most of the time, but they decided to, which I thought was an interesting approach, to use the gabions as like a stone wall. But all of the stones are going to be signed by people who are in the community. People who survive, people who know survivors, are all being signed and added to the wire baskets, and then they'll be the walls that these timbers sit on. So this is the carving that was done. This carving was done by Renee Allen and others, but Renee led it. She's an artist, no doubt about it. But this is the time when this is the exact time when that mud came down. In the end, it has kind of a Japanese feel, and I'm not sure why. That wasn't our intent. If anybody was designing it, that's not what we were shooting for. But it did end up being a really pretty structure, and the timbers that looked so big on the sawhorses seemed appropriate. This is Hidden Trace workshop that we just had last November. At the Helping Hands Foundation at the Hidden Trace Farm, which was a foundation that established by Vince Gill and Amy Grant, the singer-songwriter. But it was a wonderful site. You could see it was flat. It was just like a beautiful site. And we had wonderful tents, and we had 50 people there that participated in 13 days of building it's an amazing structure that was designed and engineered. It was designed and engineered by Joe Miller. It's 78.5 feet wide, 111 feet long. We're talking about drip edge and drip line to drip line. 111 feet long. The largest timber frame that we have built, probably since the bridge at Guelph. This is actually larger than the timber frame that we built in Pemberton. That was 7,500 square feet. And if you do the math, this had 8,600 square feet. This started out, and thanks to Will Denton, who came down and got us started on this. But then it was one of those Tom Sawyer things. And Amy and her friends, that's Amy on the right-hand side there, I'm sure you can tell with that mask. But these were friends of her, except for Rhonda here on the left. But a group of her friends who were participating in the workshop, they got interested in this, and they did the carving for the structure. Once Will got them started, they were off and running.
What this doesn't show is 5 of the other of them on the right-hand side of that, because we're working on 2 beams at the same time. And so there are 10 people busy carving for a couple of days right there on those 2 beams.
When we first started the project, I did warn folks. I did say that nobody is going to get hurt on this job site, except somebody inevitably will cut themselves with the sharp chisel. So Amy was at that kickoff meeting, and wouldn't you know it, she's the one that cut herself. So she was out there working for 3 or 4 days, and she ended up cutting herself with that sharp chisel. She was certainly game, no doubt about it. We've sworn off on the use of ladders, and so we had all kinds of equipment here for this structure. So we're using scissors lifts, and people they have their safety harnesses on and they're belted in. That happens to be, I think that's Daniel up there with that camera in the JLG there. But everybody was safe, and really nobody got hurt, and it never felt like anybody was at danger when we were raising this extremely large timber frame. So it's quite a spectacular frame. There's only 30,000 board feet in this. We had 66,000 board feet in Pemberton, and this was only 30,000 board feet. This design has been popularized by Ben Broomgraver, Joe Miller, Fire Tower, and you should read about it in Timber Framing, the journal. You should read about the dogleg timber frame. There is a lot that can be said about this approach to framing, and it was quite spectacular. Looks good at night too. Okay, that's it for the show for tonight. I'd like to thank all of the presenters. I'd like to thank you all for patience. So,
Mac, this
yes.
is Brenda. Sandy Benning wanted me to say, in addition to, since we haven't had the conference and we're doing this slideshow virtually, we are also going to have an auction, a virtual auction this year. It'll probably be in April, so more details will be coming. But if you've got ideas for structures, services, tools, experiences, keep those on mind. And this virtual auction that will be coming up in 2 or 3 months will be fun.
Yeah, so it should be a lot of fun. You'll have to bring your own beer though. Okay.
Yep. All right.
Thanks everybody, unless there's some questions.
Great.
Very inspiring. Thank you. That was great.
You're welcome.